Arlene, a diligent and sophisticated art curator, lives a double life. By day, she's respected in the art world for her sharp eye and keen taste, but by night, she's a passionate fan of a popular K-pop idol, managing a fan site with unmatched devotion. Her friends and colleagues have no idea about her secret world, where she expresses herself freely, sharing her thoughts and connecting with other fans. For Arlene, this fandom serves as an escape from her polished, orderly life. Meanwhile, George, an accomplished artist known for his work in sculpture, is also someone who keeps his life compartmentalized. Driven by discipline, he's a perfectionist who sees art as a serious pursuit and is skeptical of anything he considers unworthy of attention. His arrival at the gallery as the new director is much anticipated, and his strict reputation precedes him. When George meets Arlene on his first day, she strikes him as capable but a bit distracted, a detail that bothers him. Arlene, on the other hand, senses his intensity and immediately finds him intimidating. Yet there's something about his presence that's hard to ignore. They both carry unspoken judgments of each other, and from this first encounter, they feel like two worlds colliding. As they start working on the gallery's new exhibition, their contrasting personalities begin to create friction. Arlene's approach to art is emotional and intuitive. She believes in making connections with people, whether they are artists, patrons, or co-workers. George, however, is analytical and structured, expecting only the best and willing to discard anything that doesn't meet his standards. Arlene quickly realizes that pleasing him will be no easy task. During a meeting, as she tries to present her ideas, she catches George giving her a skeptical look, a silent judgment of sorts. He's a puzzle to her, a man of few words yet clearly filled with unyielding opinions. In between their tense professional exchanges, Arlene's other life constantly beckons. She checks her fan site whenever she can, sharing the latest updates about her idol and interacting with her online community. When George catches her during one of these moments, his eyebrows raise in mild surprise, and he remarks, "Shouldn't you be more focused?" Arlene, flustered, brushes it off, but the encounter leaves her on edge. She realizes she has to be more careful, as George is clearly the type who would never understand her passion. However, despite their differences, George can't help but notice something intriguing about Arlene. There's a spark in her when she talks about her projects, a genuine enthusiasm he finds refreshing. Beneath her polished exterior, he begins to suspect there's a unique spirit, one he's curious to understand. As their working relationship unfolds, George remains puzzled by Arlene's elusive nature. Despite her professionalism, she occasionally seems distracted, as if her thoughts are elsewhere. One day, as he walks past her desk, he notices a glimpse of her phone screen, an image of her idol. "Why invest so much in something so trivial?" he asks with an air of disdain, yet there's an undeniable curiosity in his tone. Arlene feels both exposed and defensive. She tries to explain that her fandom is more than just a hobby. It's a source of inspiration, a place where she feels understood and free from her rigid work environment. George, however, struggles to comprehend this, seeing it as an escapism he has no patience for. The conversation turns into a debate, with George arguing that passion should be reserved for meaningful pursuits, while Arlene counters that passion is what gives life depth and variety. Although they don't reach an understanding, something about their exchange lingers in both their minds. As the day goes on, George reflects on his own life. He realizes that he's so focused on perfection that he rarely allows himself to simply enjoy the process. Arlene's obsession, strange as it seems, makes him question whether he's missing something in his own life. He begins to see her fandom as something more layered, a complex part of her personality that he hadn't fully appreciated before. Arlene's idol is scheduled for a fan meeting, an event she's been eagerly anticipating. She plans meticulously, ensuring she can attend without risking her job. On the day of the event, she dresses casually, wearing a hat and sunglasses, hoping to go unnoticed. But fate has other plans. As she's caught up in the excitement of the event, she suddenly spots George in the crowd. Shocked and horrified, she tries to blend in, but he notices her. Amused, he approaches her, and Arlene's heart races as she tries to come up with an explanation. George, however, seems more interested than judgmental this time, and they engage in an unexpectedly lighthearted conversation about her fandom. To her surprise, George doesn't ridicule her. Instead, he seems curious, even somewhat envious of her unrestrained joy. As he watches her interact with other fans, he begins to realize that her passion is genuine and pure, a refreshing contrast to his own carefully guarded approach to life. For the first time, he sees Arlene as more than just a colleague. He sees her as a person with depth, warmth, and an ability to embrace life in ways he's forgotten. An unspoken understanding begins to form between them. Arlene senses that beneath his stoic exterior, George is capable of feeling and understanding more than he lets on. George, in turn, realizes that he's been missing out on a kind of passion that he didn't know he needed. Though their relationship is still full of tension, both sense a change on the horizon, setting the stage for what lies ahead. Following the fan event, Arlene finds herself facing mixed emotions at work. She's embarrassed that George saw her there, and yet his reaction has left her puzzled. Rather than making her feel small for her passion, he seemed almost impressed. For the first time, she wonders if there's more to him than his cold, perfectionist facade. At the gallery, their collaborative work on the exhibition intensifies. George's demanding standards push Arlene's patience, but his unexpected moments of understanding surprise her. During a meeting, Arlene pitches a new concept, a bold, emotional approach that resonates with her fandom experience. George's initial reaction is critical, but after a long silence, he agrees to give her idea a shot. Arlene feels a spark of pride. She's starting to see that beneath his criticism, George respects her ideas more than she first realized. In a candid moment, George reveals that he's always been driven by a need for precision because his art is all he has. Arlene, in turn, tells him about how her fandom provides a sense of community and passion she can't find elsewhere. These vulnerable confessions form an unexpected bond, and for the first time, Arlene begins to see George as something more than just her difficult boss. George starts to notice subtle changes in his outlook on life and work, partly due to Arlene's influence. Her insistence on finding joy in small things has planted a seed of curiosity in him. He starts paying attention to things he once ignored. Laughter in the office, spontaneous moments, even the relaxed way Arlene approaches her work. Meanwhile, Arlene struggles to keep her work life and her fandom separate, especially now that George has seen both sides of her. One evening, Arlene stays late to work on the gallery's social media, an assignment she volunteered for to bring more engagement to their exhibits. As she designs posts and curates images, George stops by, admiring her dedication and creativity. He can't resist teasing her about her fandom-level passion for the gallery, a comment that catches her off guard but also makes her laugh. For the first time, George seems comfortable joking with her, and she realizes that he's beginning to respect not just her work, but her as a person. In these quiet moments, George begins to see Arlene's vibrancy as something he's been missing. It frustrates him. He feels like he's breaking his own rules by letting her influence him. But the joy Arlene brings to her work and life keeps pulling him in, making him question his rigid approach to everything. As their bond grows, Arlene's friends begin to notice subtle changes in her behavior. They tease her about spending too much time with George, wondering if there's more to their relationship than just work. She dismisses it, but the thought stays with her. How could she, a carefree, passionate fan, be interested in someone as rigid as George? Yet, she can't deny her growing admiration for him. One evening, Arlene receives a message from her favorite K-pop idols team inviting her to a private fan meeting. She's ecstatic, but it falls on the same day as a crucial exhibition review with George. Torn between her two worlds, Arlene eventually chooses the fan meeting. When George learns she's taking the day off, he's surprised and, unexpectedly, a bit hurt. Although he doesn't show it, he feels slighted, wondering if he's misjudged her commitment. During the fan meeting, Arlene is thrilled to be in her element. However, her thoughts keep drifting back to George and the look he gave her when she explained her absence. She wonders why his opinion suddenly matters so much to her. Meanwhile, George tries to focus on the exhibition, but he can't shake his frustration. For the first time, He questions whether he's feeling more than mere annoyance toward Arlene. His own jealousy surprises him, making him realize he's begun to care about her in a way that's beyond professional. The next day, Arlene returns to work, feeling guilty for missing the review. She expects coldness from George, but instead finds him strangely quiet, almost as if he's processing something. Determined to make up for her absence, Arlene throws herself into work, bringing fresh energy and ideas that impress George. Though he initially wants to stay distant, her enthusiasm and sincerity begin to thaw his frustration. In a moment of vulnerability, George opens up about his insecurities. He confesses that he's not angry because she took a day off. He's upset because he feels like he's losing control, something he's always clung to. Arlene listens, understanding that his strictness stems from a fear of failure. In return, she explains that her fandom provides her with balance, a way to experience joy amidst her professional life's pressures. By the end of their conversation, a mutual respect has grown between them. They may come from different worlds, but in that moment, they find common ground. George apologizes, acknowledging that he's been too rigid, and Arlene reassures him that she values his guidance. This heartfelt exchange marks a turning point in their relationship, with both seeing each other in a new, softer light. As the exhibition deadline approaches, tensions at the gallery reach new heights. Arlene and George are spending nearly every day together, working late to perfect the exhibit. Though they've had moments of understanding, the stress brings out their differences. George is strict, meticulous, and unwilling to compromise on his vision, while Arlene brings fresh, creative ideas, challenging George's rigid approach. In one late-night work session, Arlene proposes adding a new interactive element to the exhibit to attract younger visitors. George dismisses the idea, calling it a distraction from the exhibit's theme. Frustrated by his stubbornness, Arlene finally snaps, confronting him about his inflexible attitude. She accuses him of not trusting her ideas, even though he always asks for her input. Caught off guard by her outburst, George doesn't have a comeback, leaving them, both in a tense silence. The tension lingers the next day. Both realize they might have crossed a line, but neither knows how to approach the other. Arlene begins to wonder if her feelings toward George are affecting her judgment, while George starts questioning if he's too harsh. The emotional conflict adds a layer of complexity to their interactions, with both feeling drawn to each other despite their differences. After the heated exchange, Arlene decides to take a step back and avoid confronting George directly. Instead, she channels her emotions into her work, impressing George with her dedication and commitment to the exhibit. Secretly, he's impressed by her passion, realizing that her different perspective may be exactly what the gallery needs. To ease the tension, George invites Arlene to lunch, surprising her with an apology for his earlier behavior. He admits that he's not used to working with someone so passionate and creative, and that he often feels threatened by her ideas because he's afraid of losing control. Arlene, moved by his honesty, opens up about her own fears of being seen as nothing more than a fangirl with no professional substance. They share a laugh over their shared insecurities, feeling a new bond forming between them. As they continue working on the exhibit, they find themselves laughing more and sharing moments that blur the line between friendship and something deeper. George becomes more open to Arlene's ideas, while Arlene respects George's attention to detail. The shift in their dynamic is subtle but undeniable, leaving them both wondering if their relationship could be more than just professional. Their newfound camaraderie doesn't go unnoticed by their co-workers, who start whispering about the change in George and Arlene's interactions. Rumors begin circulating about a possible romance, and while neither acknowledges it, the idea lingers in their minds. One afternoon, during a brief break, George finds Arlene sketching an idea for the exhibit in the gallery's lounge. Intrigued, he sits beside her, and for the first time, they engage in a deeply creative discussion, bouncing ideas off each other with genuine excitement. The conversation flows effortlessly, leading to laughter, shared glances, and a comfort neither expected. In a quiet moment, George absent-mindedly places his hand on top of hers as they study her sketch. They both freeze, realizing the intimacy of the gesture, but neither pulls away. In that moment, they sense an unspoken connection that feels both exhilarating and terrifying. George, the ever-composed perfectionist, feels vulnerable for the first time in years, while Arlene realizes she's drawn to his intensity and depth. They part ways that evening, each carrying the memory of that touch, uncertain about what it means but unable to forget it. As the opening night for the exhibition approaches, George and Arlene face an unexpected challenge. A major investor expresses concerns about the exhibit's direction, fearing it's too unconventional for their clientele. The investor's feedback stuns George, who has invested so much in the exhibit, and he's forced to consider scaling back some of Arlene's contributions. Determined to defend her work, Arlene passionately argues for the exhibit's original concept, explaining how the changes make it more inclusive and engaging. George is visibly torn. He wants to support her vision, but is also under immense pressure to satisfy the investor. In the heat of the moment, Arlene finally blurts out, "You don't just need to please them. Sometimes you need to take a risk for something you believe in." Her words resonate with him, and he realizes she's right. She's managed to shift his perspective in ways he hadn't anticipated. Later, as they walk out of the gallery together, George pulls Arlene aside. He admits that he's been afraid of failing and disappointing people, especially those who trust him. Arlene reassures him that she believes in him more than he realizes, and that sometimes taking a chance is worth the risk. The confession leaves them both feeling raw and exposed, but also closer than ever. As they part ways for the night, George realizes he's come to rely on Arlene not just as a colleague, but as a friend, and perhaps something more. Meanwhile, Arlene is overwhelmed by her own feelings, recognizing that her admiration for George has deepened into something much more personal. They both know that their connection has evolved beyond the professional, yet neither is ready to confront what that might mean. With the exhibit nearing completion, the work intensifies, and the gallery becomes a hub of last-minute activity. George and Arlene are now spending almost all their time together, coordinating everything from lighting to display details. Their mutual respect and chemistry have become palpable to everyone around them, but neither has openly acknowledged the growing feelings between them. One late night, they're both alone in the gallery, adjusting the placement of one of Arlene's favorite pieces. In a moment of shared exhaustion, Arlene jokes about George's infamous perfectionism, playfully calling him the gallery's one-man inspection team. George surprises her by laughing, his guarded exterior softening. He playfully retorts, calling her the gallery's idea machine. They share a long, quiet laugh that seems to dispel all the lingering tension. Without thinking, George impulsively reaches out and tucks a stray lock of hair behind her ear, leaving them both breathless. He quickly pulls his hand back, looking down, but the spark lingers, fueling a desire they've both tried to ignore. As they part ways for the night, Arlene can't shake the sensation of his touch, while George struggles to maintain his composure. They've crossed an unspoken boundary, and both are now left wondering if their connection will continue to grow or if they should try to hold back. The day after their intimate moment, an unexpected complication arises. Emma, George's ex-girlfriend, arrives at the gallery, supposedly interested in supporting the exhibition as an investor. Emma's presence unsettles George, stirring old memories and unresolved emotions. Arlene observes their interactions from a distance, feeling an unexpected pang of jealousy that she can't ignore. Emma's arrival doesn't go unnoticed by the staff, who immediately speculate about the nature of her visit. Despite her polite demeanor, Emma seems keen to remind George of their shared past, slipping subtle comments into their conversation that only he would understand. George, visibly uncomfortable, remains professional but distant. Emma's reappearance threatens to shake his newfound openness with Arlene, as he grapples with the conflicting emotions she brings. Arlene, meanwhile, can't deny her insecurities. Emma seems effortlessly elegant and has an undeniable bond with George. Feeling uncertain, Arlene begins to doubt whether her feelings for George are reciprocated or if she's misinterpreted their connection. The tension builds as she avoids George, unwilling to confront him about his ex's sudden reappearance. Despite her reservations, Arlene finds herself in a situation that forces her to interact with Emma directly. Emma casually mentions her history with George, seemingly testing Arlene's reaction. Sensing her discomfort, Emma remarks, "George and I were always drawn to each other's ambitious sides. We understood each other's drive like no one else." The comment stings, and Arlene realizes that Emma is more than just a figure from George's past. She represents a side of his life that Arlene has never known. Determined to clarify things, Arlene confronts George that evening. She expresses her confusion, not only about Emma, but about where she stands with him. George, visibly torn, finally opens up. He explains that his relationship with Emma was built on mutual ambition, and that, although it was passionate, it lacked the emotional depth he has found with Arlene. He admits that Emma's presence reminded him of how unhappy he was back then, and he assures Arlene that their connection is different, deeper. This confession shocks Arlene, who hadn't expected George to be so candid. In that moment, the weight of George's words deepens their bond. He reassures her that what he feels for her is unlike anything he's experienced before. They share a lingering gaze, and though words are left unspoken, they both know that their feelings for each other are undeniable. The moment strengthens Arlene's resolve, and she finally feels secure in her connection with George, even as Emma's shadow lingers over them. The tension reaches a breaking point one evening as George and Arlene work on final preparations for the exhibit's opening. A minor crisis arises when one of Arlene's favorite pieces is damaged during installation. Heartbroken, Arlene begins to panic, feeling the pressure of the approaching deadline. Seeing her distress, George steps in, gently reassuring her that they can fix it together. In an intimate moment, as they work side by side to repair the piece, George impulsively confesses, "You're the only one I trust to make this exhibit everything it needs to be." The vulnerability in his voice catches Arlene off guard, and before she can respond, he adds, "You've become more than just a colleague, Arlene. I don't think I can imagine doing this without you." Arlene's heart skips a beat as she absorbs his words. Feeling emboldened, she responds with equal sincerity, admitting that he's become the reason she's found meaning in her work at the gallery. The exchange feels raw and honest, stripping away any remaining pretense between them. They share a long, lingering gaze, both too overwhelmed to move, and George reaches out, gently brushing her cheek with his hand. In that moment, they share their first kiss, a tender, slow acknowledgement of everything they've been holding back. It feels like a culmination of all the stolen glances, late-night conversations, and unspoken emotions. Both are caught up in the intensity of the moment, realizing that this connection goes beyond words. They part reluctantly, both aware that things between them have changed irrevocably. However, they also understand the risks ahead. Emma's presence, the upcoming exhibit, and the scrutiny of their colleagues add layers of complexity to their newfound relationship. But for the first time, neither is willing to deny their feelings, leaving them both excited and apprehensive about what lies ahead. The aftermath of their kiss lingers in the air, changing the dynamic between George and Arlene entirely. They try to resume their usual professional interactions, but the chemistry between them is impossible to ignore. Every accidental touch, every shared look carries a charged undercurrent. Even the simplest interactions are now tinted with the memory of their shared moment. Emma, meanwhile, becomes more determined in her efforts to reestablish a place in George's life. She extends her stay and frequently visits the gallery, using every opportunity to remind George of their shared history. Arlene notices the way Emma's presence unsettles George, but instead of retreating, she decides to stand by him. She supports him silently, her confidence in their connection growing as she realizes that, despite Emma's advances, George's attention never wavers from her. In a quiet moment alone, George reassures Arlene, promising her that he's done with his past and ready to move forward. They share another tender kiss, this one full of promises and unspoken commitments. This silent vow binds them further, deepening their connection and solidifying their resolve to face whatever challenges come their way. The long-awaited day of the exhibition's grand opening finally arrives. The gallery is packed with art enthusiasts, critics, and investors, and the atmosphere is electric. Arlene's heart pounds with a mixture of pride and nervousness as she sees her work come to life. knowing that every piece tells a story she has poured herself into. She catches George's eye from across the room, and the silent support he offers bolsters her confidence. As the evening progresses, George takes the stage to give his opening remarks. He expresses gratitude to the artists, the staff, and especially Arlene, whom he credits for the exhibition's success. The way he speaks about her is filled with admiration and affection, his gaze lingering on her in a way that doesn't go unnoticed by the audience, including Emma, who watches with a mix of resentment and longing. Emma, feeling her influence slip away, decides to confront George later that night. She expresses frustration, questioning how he could have moved on so quickly. George calmly but firmly tells her that he's found something real and different with Arlene, something he isn't willing to compromise. Emma storms off, her last attempt to reclaim their past failing, leaving George relieved yet saddened by how things ended. When the exhibition concludes, George finds Arlene outside, taking in the night air. He thanks her for everything, and they share a moment of quiet contentment, knowing they've reached a turning point. Holding her hand, George whispers, "Tonight wasn't just about art. It was about us, too." His words fill Arlene with a sense of belonging she's never felt before, and they both know that whatever lies ahead, they'll face it together. News of George's passionate speech and the success of the exhibition spreads, and soon, the media catches on. Reporters speculate about his personal life, with rumors swirling about his relationship with Arlene. They dig up details about his past with Emma, painting a picture of a love triangle that threatens to overshadow the exhibition's success. George and Arlene agree to keep their relationship private, but the relentless attention strains them both. George grows protective, wanting to shield Arlene from the scrutiny, while she becomes anxious about her newfound role in his life. Emma, seeing an opportunity to exploit the media storm, gives a tell-all interview, subtly hinting that she and George still share a special connection. The article sends shockwaves through the art world, sparking rumors and stirring doubt. Arlene confronts George, worried about how this renewed gossip might affect their relationship and the gallery's reputation. He reassures her that he's fully committed to her, and together, they devise a plan to address the rumors without giving in to the media frenzy. They arrange for a public statement at a press conference, making it clear that their relationship is rooted in respect and genuine affection. At the press conference, George takes Arlene's hand, publicly acknowledging their partnership both professionally and personally. His open declaration silences critics and reassures Arlene of his commitment. Despite the challenges, their love has become a source of strength, helping them weather the storm together. With the media frenzy dying down, George and Arlene are finally able to focus on building their relationship. They make time for quiet moments together, away from the gallery and the public eye. They begin to dream about the future, discussing their aspirations and fears, each conversation deepening their bond. One weekend, George surprises Arlene by taking her to a secluded cottage by the lake. The serene landscape is a refreshing escape from the bustle of the city, and they spend the weekend immersed in each other's company. They cook together, explore the surroundings, and share heartfelt conversations about their past and hopes for the future. During a quiet moment by the lake, George confesses that he's never felt as complete as he does with her, and Arlene responds with a smile that says everything words cannot. Their time at the cottage becomes a treasured memory, a promise of the life they're building together. By the end of the trip, George presents Arlene with a simple yet meaningful gift, a silver pendant engraved with their initials. It's a symbol of his promise to stand by her, come what may. Back in the city, they face the challenges of balancing their professional and personal lives, but their bond has been strengthened by everything they've endured. They've emerged from every trial with a deeper understanding and appreciation for each other. Emma, now a distant memory, fades from their thoughts as they move forward, united and determined to face whatever lies ahead together. As George and Arlene settle back into their routine, a new challenge emerges, testing their relationship and loyalty to one another. A prominent investor, Mr. Sullivan, shows a keen interest in partnering with the gallery. His influence and resources could elevate George's gallery to new heights, but there's a catch. Mr. Sullivan has a reputation for mixing business with pleasure, and his attention toward Arlene becomes increasingly apparent. During a meeting, Mr. Sullivan begins making subtle advances toward Arlene, asking personal questions and complimenting her excessively. Arlene feels uncomfortable but remains professional, navigating the situation with grace. However, George notices Mr. Sullivan's behavior and becomes uneasy, struggling to balance his protective instincts with his professional ambitions. Later that evening, George confides in Arlene about his concerns, expressing his unease with Mr. Sullivan's conduct. Arlene reassures him, reminding him that she's capable of handling the situation, but George's protective nature surfaces, and he decides to distance the gallery from Mr. Sullivan. Arlene appreciates his decision, realizing that George's priority isn't just the success of the gallery, but also her well-being. This act solidifies her trust in him, and they share a moment of gratitude, recognizing the strength of their partnership. With their relationship deepening, George invites Arlene to his family's annual gathering, a significant step as it signifies her official introduction to his family. Arlene is both nervous and excited, eager to meet the people who shaped the man she loves. George's family lives in a charming countryside estate, and Arlene feels a warm welcome from his parents and siblings, who treat her like one of their own. During the gathering, George's father, a reserved yet observant man, takes Arlene aside to speak privately. He shares stories of George's childhood, his passions, and his heartbreaks, subtly assessing Arlene's intentions. Arlene, moved by the family's openness, reassures his father of her genuine love and commitment to George. The conversation ends with George's father giving Arlene his blessing, expressing his trust in her and his hopes for their future together. That evening, George notices how well Arlene fits in with his family. They laugh, share stories, and even dance together. George's heart swells with pride, knowing that Arlene is not only loved by him, but also accepted by those who matter most to him. The weekend becomes a cherished memory for both, a reminder of how far they've come as they build a life together. Just as George and Arlene settle into their newfound happiness, a piece of George's past resurfaces. Emma, the ex-girlfriend who previously attempted to rekindle their relationship, reappears in his life under unexpected circumstances. This time, she claims she needs closure and wants to apologize for her actions, asking for a private meeting with George to clear the air. George is initially hesitant, but Arlene encourages him to meet with Emma, sensing that it might bring peace to both of them. They agree that honesty and transparency are key, and George reassures Arlene that his love for her is unwavering. Despite her trust in him, Arlene can't help but feel a flicker of insecurity. During the meeting, Emma expresses regret for her actions, admitting that she held on to their past as a way of avoiding her own fears. She confesses that seeing George's happiness with Arlene made her realize that she had been clinging to something that no longer existed. George listens patiently, offering her forgiveness and wishing her well. Their conversation brings a sense of closure, allowing him to fully move on from that chapter of his life. When George returns home and shares everything with Arlene, she feels a weight lift off her shoulders. They discuss their insecurities, fears, and the growth they've experienced as a couple. Their relationship feels stronger than ever, built on a foundation of trust and mutual understanding. George's honesty deepens Arlene's love for him, and they embrace, knowing that they've overcome yet another challenge together. As time passes, George begins contemplating the future and the idea of marriage with Arlene. He spends weeks planning the perfect proposal, hoping to create a moment that encapsulates their journey and the love they've built. George decides to take Arlene back to the secluded lake cottage where they once shared a magical weekend, a place filled with memories of their deepening connection. On a crisp autumn evening, George surprises Arlene by taking her to the cottage, where she finds the place adorned with candles and flowers. She senses that something special is about to happen, her heart racing with anticipation. They share a quiet dinner under the stars, talking about their dreams, their plans, and the life they hope to build together. After dinner, George leads Arlene to the edge of the lake. He takes her hands, gazing deeply into her eyes as he begins to speak. He tells her how she transformed his life, how she taught him to love and trust again, and how he can't imagine his future without her by his side. With a trembling voice, George gets down on one knee, holding a ring that sparkles under the moonlight. "Arlene," he says, his voice filled with emotion, "will you marry me?" Tears stream down Arlene's face as she nods, overcome with joy. "Yes," she whispers, her voice choked with emotion. George slips the ring onto her finger, and they share a kiss that feels like a promise, sealing their commitment to one another. As they stand by the lake, wrapped in each other's arms, they know that they've found something rare and precious. They've built a love that has weathered storms, overcome doubts, and grown stronger with every challenge. This moment marks the beginning of a new chapter, one that they're ready to face hand in hand, with the future shining brightly before them. Following their engagement, George and Arlene begin the process of building a life together, starting with finding a place to call home. They search for a house that reflects both of their personalities, a mix of modern and classic charm, with open spaces for George's art and cozy corners for Arlene's quiet moments. After weeks of house hunting, they find the perfect property, a charming home on the outskirts of the city, surrounded by a lush garden with a small art studio attached. As they move in together, George and Arlene face the usual challenges of merging their lives. There are small disagreements about the decor, with George's preference for bold, eclectic pieces clashing with Arlene's love for minimalism and understated elegance. They laugh through these moments, learning to compromise and seeing each disagreement as an opportunity to grow closer. They turn the house into a sanctuary that reflects their journey and dreams, filling it with art, photographs, and mementos from their travels. With every room they decorate, every detail they plan together, George and Arlene feel a deeper sense of commitment and belonging. They invite their friends and family over for a housewarming party, celebrating their new beginning. Surrounded by loved ones, George and Arlene realize that they're not only building a home but also a foundation for the future family they dream of creating. With their personal lives settled, George and Arlene focus on advancing their careers. George's gallery continues to flourish, attracting more artists and patrons from around the world, while Arlene gains recognition as a rising star in her field. She's offered a prestigious project that could propel her career even further, but it requires long hours and travel, often keeping her away from George. Their once seamless relationship faces the strain of busy schedules and limited time together. George finds himself missing the spontaneous moments they used to share, while Arlene struggles to balance her ambition with her commitment to George. During a particularly intense work period, Arlene is asked to attend a conference overseas. George, feeling the distance between them, suggests that they take a trip together instead. Arlene, torn between her professional obligations and her desire to be with George, ultimately decides to go to the conference. While Arlene is away, George immerses himself in his art, but he can't ignore the growing ache of loneliness. He begins questioning if their busy careers might pull them apart. However, when Arlene returns, she surprises George by expressing her commitment to finding a better work-life balance. She confesses how much she missed him and how the trip made her realize that her career shouldn't come at the cost of their relationship. They agree to set boundaries to protect their time together, promising that love will always come before ambition. With their relationship strengthened, George and Arlene begin planning their wedding. Both of them want the ceremony to reflect the uniqueness of their journey, opting for an intimate, nature-inspired celebration at the lake where George proposed. They choose every detail carefully, from handmade invitations to selecting wildflowers for the decor, ensuring the event feels like a personal expression of their love. As the wedding date approaches, their excitement grows, but so does the pressure. Family expectations, last-minute changes, and logistical challenges threaten to disrupt their vision. George's mother, eager to ensure the event is flawless, offers her assistance, but her strong opinions lead to some tension between her and Arlene. George finds himself in the middle, wanting to please both his mother and his fiancée. In the midst of the preparations, Arlene reaches a breaking point, feeling overwhelmed by the weight of trying to please everyone. She confides in George, expressing her fears and frustrations. George reassures her, reminding her that the day is about them and their love, not about meeting everyone's expectations. They decide to simplify the plans, focusing on what matters most to them. a day filled with love, joy, and the people who mean the most to them. On the night before the wedding, George surprises Arlene with a heartfelt letter, expressing his gratitude for her love and his excitement to spend the rest of his life with her. Arlene, moved to tears, realizes that no matter the challenges, she's exactly where she wants to be. The long-awaited wedding day finally arrives, and it's everything George and Arlene hoped for. Friends and family gather by the lake, witnessing the serene beauty of the setting and the love that radiates between the couple. Arlene walks down the aisle, a vision in an elegant yet simple gown, her eyes fixed on George, who stands waiting with a look of pure devotion. As they exchange vows, their words capture the essence of their journey, the highs and lows, the love that grew through every challenge, and the dreams they now share. Arlene's voice trembles as she promises to stand by George through all of life's seasons, while George vows to cherish and protect Arlene, honoring the trust they've built. The reception is filled with laughter, music, and heartfelt toasts. Their friends recount memories, sharing stories that bring tears and laughter. George's father, who had once been reserved in his acceptance of Arlene, gives a touching speech, expressing his pride in his son and his gratitude for the love that Arlene has brought into George's life. As the evening unfolds, George and Arlene steal moments together, dancing under the stars and whispering promises for the future. The night feels timeless, a celebration not just of their union, but of everything they've overcome to reach this point. With the last song playing, George takes Arlene's hand, leading her away from the crowd to the lake's edge. They sit together, watching the moonlight reflecting on the water, savoring the peace and beauty of the moment. They realize that they've not only found love, but have also found a deep sense of belonging in each other. They're ready to face the future, knowing that their love will carry them through whatever lies ahead. After the wedding, George and Arlene begin their new life together, and the days that follow are filled with bliss. However, the honeymoon phase quickly fades into the reality of married life, and they face new challenges. George's art gallery, though thriving, demands more of his time and energy than he initially anticipated. Arlene, on the other hand, is given the chance to lead a high-profile project at work, a role that requires her to travel frequently and work late into the evenings. As they find themselves increasingly stretched between their respective careers, moments of tension begin to creep in. Their time together becomes scarce, and the little things, like shared meals, impromptu walks, and quiet moments at home, start to feel like distant memories. Arlene, once so determined to maintain a healthy work-life balance, begins to feel the weight of her professional commitments pulling her away from George. Meanwhile, George begins to grapple with the feeling that his relationship with Arlene is shifting. He can sense the growing distance, and while he understands the pressures they both face, he can't shake the feeling that they are drifting apart. He begins to question if they can still make it work as they both reach new heights in their careers. In the midst of their struggles, George proposes a solution. They take a break from their busy schedules and plan a trip, just the two of them, to recharge and reconnect. At first, Arlene is hesitant, torn between her career responsibilities and her desire to salvage their relationship. But after a heartfelt conversation with George, where he admits how much he misses their simpler moments together, Arlene agrees. They book a secluded cabin in the mountains, away from the noise and pressure of their everyday lives. The trip is everything they need. Time to pause, reflect, and rediscover the depth of their connection. They talk for hours under the starry sky, sharing their fears, dreams, and hopes for the future. Arlene opens up about her insecurities and the guilt she feels about prioritizing her career over their relationship. George reassures her that he's proud of her ambition, but that he needs her, too. The trip becomes a turning point for both of them, reaffirming their commitment to each other and the importance of making time for love, no matter how busy life gets. When they return home, they make a pact to adjust their priorities, ensuring that their love remains at the center of everything they do. They agree to schedule regular date nights, weekend getaways, and create space for each other, regardless of how demanding their careers become. Months go by, and George and Arlene continue to navigate the challenges of balancing work, marriage, and personal growth. Their careers continue to flourish, but now, they make conscious efforts to nurture their relationship. They support each other through the highs and lows, always communicating openly and honestly about their needs. Arlene's project finally reaches its successful conclusion, and she decides to take a step back from her demanding work to focus on spending more time with George. She is offered a promotion, but she chooses a new role that allows her more flexibility and time for herself and her family. George, having expanded his art gallery into new markets, also makes the decision to delegate more responsibilities to his team so that he can spend more time at home. The couple's life takes on a new rhythm, one that revolves around quality time, shared experiences, and deep, meaningful conversations. They invest in their home, adding personal touches that symbolize their journey. Arlene suggests that they take up a shared hobby, like cooking, and they spend weekends experimenting with new recipes together. Their laughter fills their home, and they realize that the mundane moments are often the most precious. One day, while sitting together in their cozy kitchen, George turns to Arlene with a warm smile and says, "I don't know how we got so lucky, but I'm glad we found each other." Arlene smiles back, her heart full. "I don't think it's luck," she says softly. "I think it's love. A love that's built on trust, patience, and respect. And we've worked for it every step of the way." Their journey, which began with uncertainties and obstacles, has blossomed into something beautiful. They've learned that love isn't just about the moments of joy, but also about how they handle the challenges that come their way. Together, they've built a life that is rich in meaning, filled with growth, support, and unwavering commitment. George and Arlene standing on the balcony of their home, looking out over the city that once felt so overwhelming. Now, it's a place they've tamed together, a place where their love has grown and flourished. As they stand there, hand in hand, they know that whatever the future holds, they'll face it together. For their love, the one thing they can always count on, will endure. And with that, George and Arlene step into their future, ready for whatever new adventures life has to offer, knowing that the foundation of their love is strong and unbreakable. Thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed the story. Please don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe for more delightful stories.